All right, so today my talk is on the challenges of keeping bees. And you may not know this, I'm a beekeeper. I know that's kind of weird. Actually, I'm not an actual beekeeper, I'm a metaphorical beekeeper. And this morning I want to talk to you about what that means. So there's this guy, James Dixon from Pentaho. You say Pentaho, I say Pentaho, it doesn't matter. Pentaho. He's the CTO at Pentaho, and he wrote a white paper. It's about 6 years old at this point, but I'm surprised at how few people have ever heard of it. And it's called well, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a great. It's in my speaker notes. So I'll tell you, but I'm going to tell you all about it, and it doesn't really matter what it's called. It's awesome. You should read it. But the thing is that his white paper proposes a model for commercial open source and how we can think about commercial open source. And so I want to sort of introduce that to you today, because there are a lot of people in our community and customers and partners and even employees of Alfresco that aren't, that commercial open source is something new to them. So I want to give you a way to think about it, which I think is really enlightening, despite my inability to remember the title of the white paper on which half of my talk is based. So let me introduce this model. So the model goes like this. James Dixon says that pure open source is like a beehive out in the forest. You come across this tree, there's a beehive sitting here. There's bees coming and going. The bees have free will to do what they want to. They're coming into this hive. They're producing honey. The output and the quality of the honey is just a function of how many bees you have, how healthy the hive is, and the food sources that go into this hive. Now, anyone that wants to can stick your hand inside the hive and pull out the honey at any time. You're free to do that. Now, most of us don't want to get our honey that way. We don't want raw material. We want someone to sort of package up that honey and make it easier to consume. And so James says that a pure open source project is just like this. You've got some core engineers. There's like your queen bees. Got a few queen bees in the back here this morning. You've got your members of the community or these other bees that come in and they contribute. And you've got this awesome software that comes out of it, this honey. And if you want to, you can go grab that software and use it however you want to. But that's a raw material. It's not full product, it's raw material. So then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got proprietary software. And James Dixon says that proprietary software is like a maple syrup factory. Okay, so in a maple syrup factory, if you're lucky, there's trees being tapped to start the process, right? But usually it's high fructose corn syrup and some additives and things like that. Now in Barcelona, most people had no idea what maple syrup was. I think in the room, most people in here know that maple syrup it's a sticky, sugary, sweet substance that you could put on waffles or pancakes or something. And it's very similar to honey in that respect. But the way that it's produced is very, very different. Right? These trees have no free will. Somebody just comes up and sticks a tap in them, and the trees don't really have a say in that. The customers aren't involved in making syrup. If you walk into the syrup factory and you're like, hey, I've got this awesome idea for making your syrup better. Just let me adjust some of these dials over here. They're going to, escort you out or, I don't know what. But the maple syrup factory does not welcome input into the process of making maple syrup. So a beehive or pure open source is all community. It's all community and no go-to-market function, right? They're just making raw material. On the other end of the spectrum, proprietary software is all about go-to-market. Let's take this thing and let's take it to market. And that's how they're optimized. Get the maple syrup into the stores, get them into the hands of the consumer. So two very different things, but both producing very similar outputs. Not completely interchangeable, but very similar. Now, commercial open source, that's Alfresco. That's Acquia. We heard from Dries yesterday. Commercial open source is the perfect, in a mathematical sense, combination of the two models. Okay, so commercial open source, James Dixon says, is like a honey farm. It's cultivated. You've got these hives that get set up to encourage the bees to come. And the bees come and they interact in a mutually beneficial relationship between the honey farm and the bees. That honey gets harvested, and then it gets turned over to the go-to-market engine. And the go-to-market engine takes that honey and puts it in what seems odd to me now is a bear-shaped plastic container. You know, and why is almost all honey is sold in a bear-shaped container? I mean, bears like honey, but it doesn't really make sense when you think about it. So how does a honey farm work? Well, you've got this bee farm, and you've got these beekeepers, and you've got the bees. They're making contributions as far as honey with the honeycomb. You've got the beekeepers that are providing land and hives and flowers. And these honeycombs then get harvested, and the go-to-market engine takes the honey, does some processing, packaging, distribution, gets it out to the customers. Customers pay money for that. Customers don't want to buy, don't want to pay money for raw material. They want to pay money for whole product, okay? So in the case of honey, the honey that you get from the bear-shaped container is the same honey that you would get from the hive in the tree. But the difference is it's a lot easier to go down to the store and buy it in the bear-shaped container than it is to stick your hand in the hive. All right, so this money comes back into the bee farm, and that goes to improve the bee farm. And the entire thing keeps going. Now, from the top half of this diagram, from the middle of the diagram up, that's open source. That's pure community. And from the middle of the diagram down, that's proprietary software. If you split these out, you'll have a perfect representation of each end of the spectrum with nothing added and nothing gained. And that's how commercial open source works. We've got the community. We set a roadmap. We provide the software. We provide tools. And then the community comes back and gives us use cases. And they give us testing. And they help us with our documentation. And they fix bugs. And they help other people in the forums. Right? So there's this mutually beneficial relationship going on here. And then we package up that software, and we sell it to customers, and we take that profit, and we reinvest it. And I'll be honest, not all the profits come back to the community, but I'll be happy for whatever I can get. But the point is that we need both sides of this equation. We need the community, and we need a strong go-to-market engine. That's what it takes. And so that's why I started out my talk by saying I'm a beekeeper. That's my job. I'm the community manager. So, given that, what are some challenges of being a beekeeper? And what is the state of the Alfresco honey farm, as it were? Well, so let's spend the rest of the time talking about that. Let's talk about the Alfresco honey. Now, this is an egregious violation of our branding guidelines. Please do not take the Alfresco logo and stick it on things like jars of honey. You'll get in trouble. So what are the challenges? Let's talk about 5 challenges. Here's challenge number 1. You may have noticed we have a few new faces around the company. And a lot of these new faces are maple syrup executives. They've never worked on a honey farm, okay? This freaks some people out. I get a lot of questions from people in the community that are seriously freaked out by this. What is happening? Is Alfresco still going to be open source? Does Alfresco still care about the community? And in times of change, it's unsettling. And I always turn to my favorite movie in times like this, Big Lebowski. And, I look for words of wisdom, and here's one, as there are many. And I'll just paraphrase this, which is that, take a deep breath, man. It's all cool. Nothing is wrong. Everything is cool. And I'm going to, you can take my word for it, or we can, maybe delve into that a little bit more deeply. So let's look at the 3 reasons why I think, we should all be very dude-like about our new coworkers and community members. And the first thing is, I've already mentioned it. A strong go-to-market team is hugely critical to commercial open source and to Alfresco. Our community wouldn't exist without our ability to make money off of enterprise subscriptions. It just wouldn't exist. And so it's really important that it's as successful as it possibly could be. And so we have people that are coming into the organization that have been selling syrup, maple syrup, and now we just need them to sell honey. And honestly, honey is so much better for you, than maple syrup. It's a natural food. Did you know that honey actually is the only food that doesn't go bad? It never spoils. It's the only food like that. So that's just a little fact. If you take nothing else away from my talk, you can, you can take that away. So anyway, a strong go-to-market team is extremely critical. We're providing some extremely awesome software to people for free. Have you ever wrapped your head around what we make available for free? I mean, it's amazing. There are people around the world who have the exact same problems managing their digital content as the rest of us, and they can't always afford to spend money on expensive software. And so one of the things that we do, Dries mentioned it yesterday. Let's do well. Let's make a lot of money. Let's have an awesome company. Let's IPO and be super successful, but let's also do good, And so in order to do that, we have to bring in money into the organization. All right, the second reason why it's a good thing is we've been talking 20-60-20 all week. Well, so that means that 80% of the platform is on-premise, and that openness is extremely important. Yesterday we were talking to Paul St. John on the panel, and I mentioned that he's been going out customer to customer, and he's been getting overwhelming feedback from you, our customers, and our partners on how important the openness of our platform is. Okay? And you heard John say it in the John Eyeball in the product demo yesterday. So it's incredibly important. And for the other 20% that's not on premise, that's in the cloud. Open API is important. You need to be able to write, if you're a partner, you need to be able to write solutions that stick data into the cloud. And if you're a customer, you need to be able to take your data with you if you decide to make a change. Data liberation, open APIs, it's important. All right, now the third thing is that back in 2009, John wrote a blog post. This blog post is called Building a Stronger Open Source Product. And it sets out sort of some guidelines on how we think about what goes into Enterprise Edition versus Community Edition. And the point was that we want to have a strong open source product. Now, since 2009, the company has evolved a lot. Back then, there was only one product. Now there's 4 or 5, right? Back then, we were only on-premise. Now we're hybrid, we're SaaS, and we're cloud. So a lot of things have changed. And so we need to go back and look at those guidelines and make sure that they're up to date in the context of where we are as a company. And so we're doing that. John and I are working together on that. But the thing that you should know is that the fundamental values of the message that were in that blog post aren't changing. Nothing is changing about that, right? So it's important. It's important to know that that's what's going on there. All right, so that's challenge number 1. And also, by the way, the maple syrup executives that I'm talking about here we're spending a lot of time having these discussions, and we're educating them about the community and about how the honey farm works, right? It's been going pretty well. All right, so the second challenge is the diversity of the gene pool. Our honey farm is enormous. It's enormous. It is in literally every corner of the globe. This is a map, it's about a year old now, but this is a map of active forum contributors. These are not people that are reading the forums. These are people that are creating posts in the forums. This is people that had created posts in a prior month or something like that. And it's almost every country and continent on the globe. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so this is a challenge in terms of culture, in terms of time zone, language. There are all kinds of challenges when your honey farm is scattered across the globe. Now, every year at DevCon and this year included, I sort of single out some people in our community, and I call them community stars. And I make sure that they can come to the conference, and I pay their conference pass and everything. And these are the community stars for 2013. These are people that spend a lot of time in our community. And I always leave people off. There's always other people I'd like to include. But I want you to know who these people are, and I want them here at the conference because I want you to be able to talk to them. Now, one thing that you may be noticing, Europe is well overrepresented in this list here. We've got definitely some America's people on this list here, but we gotta restore the balance of power here in the community star list. So I could really use your help to do this in the coming year. But what I did was, instead of just listing out the names and we could make them stand up and we could give them a cheer and stuff, what I wanted to do was pick a few of these and introduce them to you one level deeper. And what I want you to watch for is the diversity of this group that I'm showing you, okay? So first person up here is Ian Crew. Ian is here this morning. Ian works for UC Berkeley. He's an enterprise customer. So the first thing you should be noticing here is that sometimes people think the community is for community edition. And the only thing, those things have the same word in them, but the community is for everybody. And Ian is a great example. He hangs out in IRC. Every time I go to the chat room in IRC, pound Alfresco at Freenode, Ian's there, and he's helping people. And what's important to Ian is that he says that he gets moral support from the community, because he talks to people who've been there before. As he climbs the learning curve, those people are there, right, to give him moral support. And now as he has become an expert himself, he is able to provide that moral support as well to other people. Moral support, we've all been there, right? It's 2 in the morning and you can't figure out why your web script won't run or something. It's like dark times sometimes to get that going. And you need someone who can say, oh, look, it's right over here, and so that's what's important to Ian. So thanks, Ian. This is Oksana Kirisheva. She is a language packer and a hacker. She is in charge of the community translators that we have. Over 270 people are working on translations for Alfresco at any given time. Not only did she create the Russian language pack, but she created a process at crowdin.net/project/alfresco so that other people, whatever language they want to translate the user interface into, can participate, So she definitely paid that one forward. I think it was really cool. And what she says here is that to her, the Alfresco community is like a family. And she meets people in the forums, and she meets people in IRC, and then she goes to a meetup or she comes to a summit, and she meets people in person, and it's like seeing family members that she knows. And so to her, the community is about human connections, So I think that's awesome. Jan Fitzner, partner, he's an add-on king. The guy creates amazing add-ons for your Alfresco share installation. He participates in share extras. He wins developer contests when we have contests and stuff. And for him, the forum is about climbing the learning curve, inspecting or understanding a new part of the platform that he's never looked at before. He helps people with their questions, and then in so doing, he comes up to speed on that part of the platform. So for him, it's about learning and learning by helping others. Here's Amy Currens. She works for TriBloom. And she's the queen of the meetup, She runs the Bay Area meetup. She runs the Colorado Springs meetup. She sometimes runs the Southern California meetup. And here's what's interesting about Amy. First, she's a smart and funny person. You guys, if you've been around to some DevCons and at different events, you've probably met her. But she's not technical. So she loves our community. But she brings to it her skills that she has, which is about organizing meetups and finding speakers and setting agendas, and she brings those, and that's her contribution to the community. Now, I would be hugely remiss if I didn't mention the engineering team. The engineering team, it's something we should be incredibly proud of. Have you ever seen another software company that is better represented in the community by the individual engineers than Alfresco? I can't think of one. It's amazing to me. And I don't have a screen big enough to put all the engineers that appear that I'd want to. So I picked a couple. I picked Will. Will Absent is an integration engineer, and his claim to fame is share extras. You can get over 40 add-ons for your Alfresco installation from Share Extras. They're free to use and trick out your install. And it's not just Will by himself. It's a team of people that work with Will on Share Extras, and that's cool. Then there's Mark Rogers. Mark is a repository engineer, and he has the most forum posts ever. He has the most forum posts ever. He will always have the most forum posts ever, I'm now convinced. I think something like 4,200. I don't even track it anymore. It's like amazing. If you've ever asked a question in the forums, it's a very good chance that Mark has weighed in on your thread. Now here's the amazing thing. None of these people do this as their primary job responsibility. None of them. They do it because they love the community, and they do it for a variety of reasons. There are as many reasons why people participate in our community as there are people in the community. And that's a challenge. That is a huge challenge, right? First of all, it's awesome, but it's a challenge for me as a beekeeper, because the next challenge is attracting and keeping bees. If we were all motivated by the exact same thing, I would just sort of drill down on that motivation, and boom, I'd have an amazing community. But the problem is, 10,000 different motivations are at work here, right? So how do you attract and keep bees? How do you get people to come into our community and stick around? First off, you have to make it easy for newcomers. I think we could do a lot more here. And I spend a lot of time personally trying to make it easier for newcomers, and I think we could do better as an organization, as a community, to not just welcome newcomers, hi, let me introduce you to some people, but just literally the technical on-ramp that we put people through, we can make this better. So making it easy, and honestly, just making it easy for people to understand what is our community, how do I get involved? What if I want to help out? What if I want to make a contribution? Where do I figure that out? We can make that easier. Fostering a welcoming, helpful environment, I think we're doing awesome here. Every once in a while, people will get frustrated, and that's natural, but I talk to a lot of other community managers around the industry, and man, there are some serious problems in some of these other communities, and I am so happy that we don't have to deal with those, because everyone is very professional and courteous and friendly and stuff. So I'm really proud of the Alfresco community on that aspect. Making contributions visible. We want you guys to contribute. I think sometimes people are like, well, I don't feel like you guys want my contribution. We do, and it's just, I don't think we do a good job of letting you know that, letting you know how to do that. When you talk to, I spent some time talking to Mozilla Foundation earlier in the year. Their #1 determiner for whether somebody comes into their community and sticks around is how that community person's first JIRA ticket is treated. Well, it's not JIRA, I guess it would be Bugzilla or whatever, but the first bug ticket that they file. And even if it's just to go in and say, you didn't really file this correctly, or we need more unit tests, some sort of response that says, we're listening. That is the #1 determiner about whether that person is going to stick around and continue to participate in the community. I think we could do a lot better on this. It's something that I haven't been watching very closely, and I think I'd like to start working on this in the coming year. Okay, next is providing nourishing raw material, right? Your bees aren't going to make honey if they don't have anything to eat. This is a chart that shows the release velocity of Alfresco Community Edition since Labs 3B all the way to 4.2E on the far right. You can see the vertical axis is the number of elapsed days in between releases. And you can see up until 4.0A, which is that first of the 3 spikes there, we had a nice sort of rolling set of releases. We would do a community release on average. It's about 80 days, somewhere in there. Then when 4.0A came around, it changes from a nice smooth curve to these really big spikes. Now, none of us at Alfresco want to see these spikes. And a lot of it has to do with some sort of housekeeping that we've been doing behind the scenes with code line consolidation and things like that. So we're all trying to get this back down to a more frequent release cycle. And I think that's really important for the community. These frequent releases give you all something to chew on. You know, it's the food that feeds the community. We have to improve that. All right, challenge 4, measuring the happiness of bees. How can you tell if a bee is happy, right? It's really tough. Well, I don't expect you to read this chart. There are a lot of different ways you can measure a community, a lot. We track a lot of these measures. And sometimes what we'll do is we'll pick out a couple of those and say, okay, for this quarter, we're going to focus on these. For this next quarter, we're going to focus on these, and we try to move the needle. And so we try to be quantitative about it because I think there are things that you can quantify. But more importantly, how does the community feel? What's the qualitative measure of our community? We already talked about a welcoming attitude and outlook. Are people getting help when they ask for it? Is there always something happening? Is the hive buzzing? You know, and is it a vibrant, healthy community? And I think anecdotally, it suggests that we're doing good on this. I think there are probably some little things here and there that we can improve. We just did a community survey about a month ago, and so this may help us put some data behind this. But I think most people will tell me that the Alfresco community feels great. It does feel like there's something always kind of happening. Challenge number 5, and this is the last one. Understanding what bees want. We sort of talked about the motivations earlier. You know, the community team, I think, has made a lot of progress in the last few years. Sort of getting the community organized, making big system improvements in terms of the forums and standing up the add-ons directory and things like that. We started focusing on external communities, places that haven't necessarily heard about Alfresco, but like developer communities, to try to incorporate them into the community. But something that Jimmy Whale said in Barcelona really stuck with me, which was, you know, stop asking what your community can do for you and ask them what they want to do, and then figure out how you can make your community work for the community. So listen to what the community wants, and then try to put things in place that can make them achieve their goals. And I think that's what we could focus on in the coming year. So we're still in our planning process, but that's maybe a theme for the coming year. We'll see. Now, we've started to do some of these things that are about focusing a little bit more on our community. The first is about 6 months ago, we started a quarterly newsletter. Now, I know you don't need, you need one more email in your inbox like a hole in the head. I have very few tools for communicating with you guys, and email, unfortunately, is one of them. But if you would like, if some people prefer to get sort of these news roundups in their inbox, so you can go to alfresco.com/company/newsletters, and you can sign up for the community newsletter. And every quarter, it won't be any more frequent than that, we'll send you a newsletter and tell you what's going on. Here's another thing we've been experimenting with. We've been doing Google Hangouts on air, so live Google Hangouts. And we've been doing 2 flavors. One is Tech Talk Live, which is very focused on a technical topic. And we'll have a panelist, and we'll sort of dive into that topic for an hour. We do those once a month. Usually it's the first Wednesday of every month. Then we've also been doing office hours. It's exactly like it sounds. It's the community team sitting around sort of talking about what's been going on in the community for the last 2 weeks. And I know that doesn't appeal to everybody, but it's fun, and people are getting into it. And sometimes we add community members via video. This is Boris from Zenit, to talk about different things. I can't remember what we were talking about this day, but it's cool. So check it out. And these all go to YouTube. So if you feel like it, then you can go watch them. Somebody told me yesterday that they actually they download the audio from this and then listen to it as they're walking to work. Next, we're working on a new landing page. Today, the community landing page, like where would you go if I asked you, where's the one central place where you can find out what's going on in the Alfresco community? There's really not a great answer to that. The Alfresco Wiki is sort of that, but it's not a great tool for what we need to do. What we want to do is provide an on-ramp so people that are new to us can either get the tools they need, download what they need to, and go, or learn how to extend it, or get involved in the community. And then for people that are already in the community, we want to provide an aggregation so that if you're watching some foreign threads, or if you're watching JIRAs or what have you, you can sort of have those in one place. So we're having fun. We're busy. We're not scaling. The community team doesn't scale very well, and that's why I need you guys. Every bee in a hive makes a contribution, okay? And you can, here's some ideas for how to do that, help someone in the forums, report bugs, contribute fixes, start or join a meetup. Where's Mitch? Where's Mitch? Mitch, would you stand up? I'm sorry, I didn't tell you I was going to do this. This is Mitch. He works at New York Philharmonic. He's also in charge of the New York meetup group. There's about 115 people signed up for the New York meetup group. So if you're in New York and you want to meet up with other Alfresco people, talk to Mitch. Where are the Rivet guys? They may not be around. But there's a New England meetup group. So if you're in the New England area and you want to be part of the New England meetup group, the TSG guys, where's Ray? He runs the Chicago meetup group, right? So we've got you covered. There is a meetup group near you. I can almost promise it. So if you can't find it, come find me and I'll help you find it. So find a way to make a contribution, even just by being here. Even if a speaker in our lightning talks, which were awesome, by the way, that's a contribution to the community. So thanks for your contribution. Let's build something beautiful together. I hope you've enjoyed the conference, and have a great last day, and I hope to see you later today. Thanks.